This episode of Tales from the Lot is sponsored by ShakedownT-shirts.com with unique lot-style T-shirts, license plate frames, coffee mugs, and all sorts of things for Grateful Dead, Fish, Zappa, Panic, and more. ShakedownT-shirts.com, where all U.S. orders over $35 ship free. And just for Tales from the Lot listeners, use the code LOT20 for 20% off of any order. That's LOT20. Tales from the Lot, Episode 8, the best Grateful Dead show I have been to. Brian from Michigan joins me to talk Soldier Field 93, Soldier Field 94, Richfield 94, the Bangles, and so much more. Hi, welcome to Tales from the Lot. I'm Will. This is Brian from Michigan, and we're going to talk about Soldier Field 94 and Richfield 94 and probably all kinds of other stuff too. So, Brian, welcome. How's it going?
Good. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, no, I'm doing fantastic. It's been a pretty good winter here in Colorado, and I know Michigan's cold, and I saw some snow on the news, I think.
It's January. It's to be expected. So,
yeah.
You talked about Soldier Field 94, but I was actually thinking about Soldier Field 1993, if that's okay with you.
Oh, no. Oh, that's, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Soldier Field 93 also. Totally.
Oh, okay.
Are you from Michigan originally? Have you been there the whole time?
I am, correct. Yep. I was born and raised in Grand Rapids. I went to school at Michigan State, and that's when I sort of started going to Grateful Dead shows.
Nice. I'm from Indiana, so I hit the Hash Bash up there a couple of times, and it
okay,
was all right. You know, I was young, so it was kind of fun. And so, and what were you into? You know, growing up, were you a child of the '80s, kind of into?
Yeah, well, I got into the Grateful Dead from a lot of different angles. I always knew the name out there, but I wasn't really familiar with the music until about I got into high school, which had been the late 80s. It would have been right around Touch of Grey came out. That actually may have been in middle school. I can't quite remember when that was released. But in the late 80s, it was kind of the golden years for used record stores. A lot of people were turning in their vinyl to purchase CDs, and so a young guy like me could go to the used record store and walk out with a handful for $10 of all great 70s rock and 60s rock, and naturally the Grateful Dead were involved with that. So I was actually really familiar with their music before I actually ever saw them live. I remember seeing them occasionally in Rolling Stone and seeing photographs of the scene and just thinking to myself, I got to go there.
Yeah, Rolling Stone loved them for sure.
Yeah, and then so after I graduated from high school, that would have been in June. I think I heard like you on one of the earlier casts. I went to my first Grateful Dead show here in Michigan. It was Pine Knob, but that would have been summer of '91. And then I didn't see him again until spring of '92, and that was it for 1992. And then I had tickets to go to the Soldier Field shows in the summer '93 and the Deer Creek shows. And the scene was a lot different at that time than it was in 1991. It kind of seemed like it really just grew tremendously. It turned into a monstrous beast in some respects. But it made for a lot of adventure and meeting unique people and having fun experiences, and that was definitely what happened to me in 1993. So we were let's see, I went with a bunch of buddies of mine in a beat up old VW bus, and it was a bus. I'm surprised we made it there. And in fact, we almost didn't because the van broke down on I think it was like I-80 there on northern Indiana or going to northern Illinois, and a tire blew out.
Like, oh man, that's a tough spot. That like people drive like maniacs on 80 through Chicago there. Like it's just insane.
Yeah, and I don't even want to think about that part of it because I was young.
Exactly.
You don't think about the dangers of it, but nowadays I go, oh boy,
Yeah.
So the tire blew, and we all kind of looked to the owner of the van. Like, well, let's put the spare on, and he kind of chuckles and goes, "Well, that was a spare."
Well, there's your problem.
Anyway, we finally made it there, and it was a lot different scene than what I experienced at Pine Knob 2 years ago in summer of '91. It was just absolutely massive. Just all the swarms of people and the cars and the vans. But in any event, we went into the show, and it was a mediocre show, but there was a large rainstorm that came in that night, and which added a certain atmosphere to the whole concert. There was, lightning, sort of that heat lightning that you get around the crowd, the clouds around the stadium, and it Bobby played All on the Watchtower, when he sang, and the wind began to blow. Of course, the wind was just blowing, and the speakers were kind of waving around. It kind of ruined the sound a little bit, but it certainly added a very electric sort of atmosphere to the whole experience. And anyway, so when the show ended, we climbed back into our rust bucket van, and we had no idea where we were going to go. And of course, security just kind of shuffles you onto the highway, and it was pouring rain. And not only were we short on tires, the windshield wipers were not quite working up the car, so we couldn't see a thing. And we're on the highway of Chicago, and a lot of comedic screaming started. And so the first exit we found, we pulled right off. And so if we pulled off, I don't know if we jumped a curb or if there actually was another road there to turn on. It was kind of like Chevy Chase in Summer Vacation when he falls asleep,
Yeah, like spins into the motel spot there.
yeah, pretty much. But it wasn't a motel that we spun into. We finally were able to see where we were, and we were underneath the overpass of the highway, and it was a huge encampment of VW vans. And we were thinking to ourselves, all right, we're here.
We're home.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And it was, so we spent that night there, hanging out with all the other campers, in basically Gotham City, and just had a great time. The next night, we went back there to camp, and it was the same sort of scene, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the parking lot was massive, and it did seem like from, like you, I started in 91 and saw a couple in 92, and then 93 I started seeing more, and it was definitely like an explosion and a lot more like a Jimmy Buffett concert maybe. There was just a lot of people who were there for the spectacle, and because they saw it on the news or whatever, just to see what's going on, and maybe some of them came out for the good of it and got something out of it. Who knows? Hopefully
right. And I know the band was discouraging that. In fact, I remember waiting in line at Soldier Field and hearing Bill Lesh kind of come over the loudspeaker, "Please don't come if you don't have tickets, and go and enjoy your summer dancing and whatnot." But it was the spectacle of the whole thing. It was larger than just the band at that point, and there were a lot of bad points about that, but there were good things too. For an example, so the second night we again spent underneath the overpass, and the VW bus right next to us had a little more space for me to sleep on, for me to sleep, because we were all sleeping in the driver's seat and the passenger seat, really uncomfortable. And so I climbed in there, and passed out pretty much. In the morning, it was blue skies, summer sunshine. We were already on the highway, and I didn't even know who my host was, sort of thing. And my eyes started focusing, and the VW bus that I'm in was absolutely immaculate. It was like a vintage early 70s. The woodwork was perfect. All the upholstery, just everything. The engine purred like a little kitten, unlike the wobbly rust bucket that had taken me.
So when you say on the highway, like you're moving down the highway?
Yeah. So we were headed down to Deer Creek. So he was going to Deer Creek. I was going to Deer Creek. So I don't remember. I just remember waking up, and he's like, hey, and so we're the cornfields already. It was it's like kind of, we're not in Kansas anymore sort of experience. And I started paying, before I said hello to my host, the driver. I kind of first noticed on his wrist was a real Rolex. I mean, it wasn't a fake Rolex. It was the real deal. It's like, that's a really nice watch. And he starts talking, and I realized, oh, you're not from around here. He was actually from England. And
Oh,
so, it was just him. And like a true Englishman, he had a keg of Guinness in the back, too. So to this
of
day,
course, of course he did.
I, I have never traveled in such style to any musical concert as I did in those early stages in 1993.
I have so many questions. Like,
I
did
don't
they
know
bring the
very much.
van with them, or did they bring the van with them, or did they buy it here or rent it, or were they
It,
just here
it,
for tour?
he was older than me, so I was, like 20 or 21 at the time. I think he was like his mid 30s, and he was a little dodgy about the whole those questions. He basically said, "Oh, I'm here for school or something." I
Yeah,
got
all
the
right.
impression, he has his own story to tell wherever he is in the world. I
Fair
got the
enough.
impression he may have come from, I don't know, understand the whole lineage thing in England, but I know that's important. Um, Long story short, I think he came from quite a bit of money, and he was just hanging out here in the States doing Dead Tour.
You were driving around with Prince William.
Remains cousin or just,
No,
right. So
who knows?
I just do enjoy this for what it is.
Nice, nice. Yeah, those are good shows too. Uh,
Uh,
those '93 Chicago shows. That I mean, they may not be the best, but there's never a bad one, really. You always have a good time and meet
oh, sure.
interesting people along the way.
Right. And so then Soldier Field at '94, I was really looking forward to, again for just the human monstrosity of. I mean, Soldier Field was huge. The
Yeah,
other like Soldier Field and Buckeye just brought in droves of people from everywhere. Um,
for sure.
but you're going to like this story. The so I think there were two or three shows there for '94, and one of them, and I was basically doing all the East Coast tour for 1994 that summer. And
There were two actually. I have my set list here that I wrote at those
oh, really?
shows. Yeah,
Oh,
I,
oh,
I was going through my dead base.
oh,
Yeah, I was
nice,
going through my
nice.
dead base today, and they were tucked in there amongst those, and I was like, oh, I'm going to pull those out later.
Okay, great. And then, now
Yeah.
you mentioned that you had miracled someone. Was it the first show or the second show?
What? Honestly, I don't remember which one it was, but my crew was actually. So it would have been 7:24 because we were on the floor that night. And so, yeah, me and 4 or 5 other people were walking in, and I looked down, and there was a mail order ticket with a little foil bear on it. And I pick it up, and I'm sure it's from 2 weeks ago from wherever it was. But it was for that night, and it was for the seventh row, and we all had tickets. We were like 28th row in the field, and we were all together. And I was like, I don't want to deal with trading around seats, so I'm just going to give somebody this ticket, whoever looks needy. And we got up to the gate, and there was a guy there who just he seemed like he wanted it the most. So I handed it to him, and he about lost it. And I was like, look at the row on that. He's like, seventh row? And I was like, yeah, that's seventh row. But one thing I do remember, you were talking about those shows blowing up in Soldier Field is it was super hot. And the
Uh,
traffic was just stopped trying to get
oh yeah.
into any lot there. That I remember being parked like a mile away, and we were selling water and grilled cheese after the shows or whatever. But I'm like, I'm going to take a case of water on a skateboard and just head up through traffic here. And people were grateful. I was like, just have some, because it is like 105 degrees out here, and
Oh,
we're all
sure.
just sitting. So. Yeah, it's kind of a memory that was so hot that day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I think it was the second night. I think it was the second night. So my girlfriend and I didn't have tickets, and someone actually miracled us tickets,
ah,
2 tickets. Yeah, and I
gotcha.
didn't. He just basically handed to me and walked away, and didn't pay attention to where they were at all. And that night, Traffic was on tour with the Dead.
Yep.
And so I wanted to go in and see Traffic early. or going early to see Traffic. And so I think the day before was the hot one. It was kind of that misty, very humid weather, rainy and cloudy throughout the entire
right
day.
on the lake.
Yeah, yeah. And we when we went in, the clouds had just started to roll away, and the sun was shining through. And then I kind of looked at the ticket to figure out where we're going, and I realized, oh, we're on the floor. Fantastic. So we walk into that massive Coliseum, and that sun starts beating down for the first time all day, and it kind of felt like like a Roman Coliseum with the sun coming out. Music, all fun things.
Yeah.
Than lions and tigers.
I haven't seen Soldier Field in a long time. I think it's been renovated, but at that time it did sort of resemble that Coliseum look too.
Oh yeah,
it may still. I don't know.
Yeah, that was probably a little bit.
Yeah, they had like all those columns. I remember the wave really happens well there too. I mean, being on the floor and just watching the wave go around at set break.
I forgot about that, but now that you mentioned, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Deadheads can actually get pretty organized when it comes to fun shit.
Yeah. So anyway, we entered the back side of the Coliseum, and so we're on the floor, and we start walking forward, and while they're doing it, the Traffic just started playing Rainmaker. That Rainmaker, and it just kind of was the perfect song for what was going on with the weather. And I'm counting up the rows, and we're getting closer and closer and closer. And we were about between 5 and 10 rows back from the front, right in front of Bobby and Jerry's, right dead center. And nice. I had never seen a Dead up close like that before. I actually prefer being back by about the soundboard to see the lights, but not having that experience, it was absolutely fabulous. And having it Miracle. We were close enough to see the sign language interpreter for the hearing impaired up at front by the speaker. I had never known that they had done that, and that blew my mind. So the whole experience was absolutely wonderful. And so now sometimes when I go to Phish shows, I enjoy Miracle people, for the exact same thing. I just kind of drop it in their hand and walk away and kind of let them, have their fun with it.
Totally. That's funny that you got that there. I wonder if there was somebody from the Dead just out dropping tickets around in the lot.
It could. Who knows? I don't know.
Somebody finds them and hey, I have tickets. Let's pass them on. Who knows? So okay. So you saw 91, 92. This was in 93. So how many shows did you see altogether? And when Jerry was around.
Yeah, so I only saw one show in 91 and one in 92, and then there was Deer Creek and Soldier Field 93 that summer. Did some of the fall tour at Richfield, and then I did all of East Coast summer tour 94, but then also the Richfield spring shows. Or actually only one. I was supposed to, just one of the Springfield Richfields in 1994, and that was a similar experience going into Soldier Field in 93 because, again, our car broke down on the Ohio Turnpike this time. A little bit safer than the Chicago one.
Definitely.
I was with a larger crew at that point, and we realized that we weren't going to make it to the show. But enough people stopped by to offer help. We sold off all the tickets, got a mechanic to tow us, and fortunately there was a hotel room there, and was able to get the vehicle back up and running. So we went to the second night without tickets, and we scored tickets for everyone. We were all scattered though, just had to find what we could. And so my girlfriend and I, we kind of floated quite a bit. But what was great about it was that was easily the best Grateful Dead show I had been to. The second show is just phenomenal, especially from about midway, the whole second show. During the He's Gone, I knew Grateful Dead's music well before even ever seeing them. But during that He's Gone, it clicked with me. Like all of a sudden, it felt like it wasn't this massive impersonal auditorium or arena. It felt like a theater, rather than 20,000 people, wherever the capacity was. It felt like 3,000. Everyone was just queued into like Phil says, the circuit was closed. The band it was no longer the band and the audience. It was just the music, and they held that level on through the encore, which was very rare in 1994. And so I was just real. We only had tickets for the first night, so to end up able to go to the second night and seeing what I mean. I know it was a good show because for years I remembered it just like every component of it. And then when I finally got the tapes one day, it's like, yep, that's exactly how I remembered it. It's I think they did. What you have to keep in mind, I think, for that time period is that the Grateful Dead was always going through different musical styles and different ways of expressing the music. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And there was and at that time, Jerry had the Bolt guitar, which had that very clean, almost like acoustic type sound.
Was that okay? So, if I may, because of this show today, I took a deep dive into Garcia's guitars for like an hour and a half when I should have been doing a whole lot of other stuff. And so I'm looking up pictures and trying to find pictures of this show with him on stage. And there's one that is apparently mislabeled that has Bruce Hornsby standing next to him that has this date on it, which sent me down the wrong rabbit hole for a while. And so I was trying to figure out. So was it the Bolt guitar? Because absolutely, from The Greatest Story, like as soon as the first notes of Greatest Story ring out, I'm like, that's the guitar tone of Jerry's that I like the best. Just like in that Greatest Story, there's like some just like a solo and he's just doing some phrases at the end where there's some maybe the Mutron and some distortion and maybe a little bit of wah or something, and it is just like so pure and clean sounding, even with those effects on it, and just. You could tell he was feeling it and digging whichever guitar it was. I was thinking it was the Rosebud, but yeah, was it the Bolt that night?
It was. That's basically what he played from 1994 to 1995. It always to me sounded like an acoustic guitar, or to get far out there, it sounded like he wasn't playing notes. It sounded like he was playing light beams, not light beams of stars. This is like floats of light. And certainly the lights that they would play with during the show would contribute to that sort of, take on the sound of it. But when he played it well, but it was also very unforgiving because it was such a clear. There was so much space around the notes, and so if you missed the note here and there, it became a lot more noticeable when there's more filling in between the notes. I'm not a guitar guy, so I'm not quite sure how to explain all of that. So
right, and that was right around the change of from Healy to Cutler, I think, is who took over. Is that right? And sound. So I was reading some other people discussing that there's a noticeable difference in cleaner sound, and when I was listening to the recording, it was definitely clean and sounded really good. So whatever was going on that night, and whichever guitar it was, at the Bolt. It sounded really good. I mean, and he was on fire that night. Like, and if Jerry's on, the rest of the band's on too, I guess, because his energy will rub off.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, even songs like Eternity took on sort of a new life, and the harmonies in that. If you haven't listened to this show, give it a listen, because even if you hate Eternity, listen to the harmonies in there, because that's some Crosby, Stills, and Nash sounding stuff they got going on this night at least. Like their vocals were together on that, and it was a good night.
Oh yeah, and the way he belts out New Speedway Boogie and Stella Blue, the jam he has.
Yeah.
The jam he has before the guitars, I think it's called like the Matilda jam. To me, it sounded like Liberty without the lyrics. The kind of that bounce to it. And so when they encored with Liberty, it's like they brought the music all the full circle. It's just a great show. So the Nash was still there.
Yeah, the Love Light, Stella Blue Love Light, definitely a highlight. Just kind of seamlessly flowing into that really incredible
Hmm.
Stella. Yeah, good stuff. I mean, High Point Dead, even in later years, you know.
Yep, yep, absolutely, yeah, yeah.
And then,
The magic was still there. You had to look for it a little bit, and it seemed a lot of shows that I went to, you'd have moments of that, but rarely the entire set, let alone the entire show. So being able to see one of those shows, it made a difference. The crowd heard it. Everyone in the arena knew it. Well, maybe not consciously, somewhere in their psyche, they knew what was going on. And I remember that night, being back in the hotel with a group of friends, and everyone was just in a really light spirited, fun filled mood. And certainly the great music that we saw played into that.
yeah, um, yeah, and it's like every song, the next song would be a different sort of guitar tone, and just awesome.
So I did all of East Coast summer '94 and all of spring '95. And we didn't have tickets for every show, so sometimes just be hanging out, like I shouldn't be, but still having
Yeah, yeah.
fun and having experience. So, and
Did
then
you go to?
yeah,
Did you make it up to Auburn Hills for Jerry's birthday? '94, summer '94.
for one of the nights and the one Scarlet Fire that they played that tour, I missed.
Yeah, that was the night. That,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, they didn't play it all tour. They get there and then so what was it? It was a Bob song like "Music Never Stopped" or something. Ends the first set. So okay, Jerry's gonna come out. It's gonna be Scarlet Fire, and all will be right with the world. And no, it's Victim or the Crime. Like, are you kidding me? And then Scarlet Fire. And I so yeah,
Uh,
maybe they were like trolling us or something. Who knows? Or they could just be unconscious of all that stuff and just doing whatever happens. And who knows?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I knew people
uh,
that went to their show, and I sat that one out, and I was like,
yeah, that was the one. It
okay,
was a good one too. They circled that solo section a couple more times than usual.
I'll have to give that a listen.
Yeah,
The other show that I really remember well is it was a second night, Deer Creek in 1993. There was a great looks like rain. I mean, it was a looks like rain that you'll never forget if you were there.
yeah,
And then they did the second verse of Dark Star coming out of drums. I think that night they did the Days Between, a really great version of Days Between. So that would probably be the second really good quality show that I attended.
yeah. I was at that run, and I remember that Days Between really standing out. And
Did you do Buckeye '94?
so '94 was with Traffic, right? Yeah, yeah. '94
It
was with
was, yeah,
Traffic,
yeah,
and it rained a bunch that time. I think it was super hot in '93, and then it rained a bunch in '94.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That afternoon, you could watch the barometer kind of just drop by the second.
Yeah, I remember I was getting ready to go in there and I wanted to see Traffic because that was the first show that I was going to be at with Traffic and my friend's like I don't really care that much for Traffic. I'm going to hang out here and party and I'll find you inside. And I was like, dude, you've never really been to Buckeye. You're not going to be able to find me inside. He says, just tell me where you be. I said, okay, just go to the soundboard right in the middle and walk 20 feet, just foot after foot, 20 paces, and I'll be right there. And so Traffic was just wrapping up, or it might have even been set break, and I feel this tap, and I turned around, it was him, and somehow he had found me 20 foot in front of the soundboard, and we had we continued to have a great time and hear that. What did they played? Here Comes Sunshine, I think that night.
I can't remember. Would that have been
Or
'93?
Rain. Yeah, or Rain. One of the.
Yeah,
I think it was
yeah,
Rain.
yeah. They did a lot of rain. Yeah, well, the reason why I mentioned Buckeye is because they did, if I recall correctly, they did do Saint of Circumstance that night.
Oh yeah, that's true. And yeah. I always get those Buckeye kind of looks the same to me. I always get those shows mixed up. I know that
Uh,
over the pandemic they did one. They released one of those on YouTube. one of those Buckeye shows. I think it's the '93 one, the one with Eyes of the World. That's a
Yeah,
pretty killer show.
yeah,
Were
yeah.
you at
And
'93?
yeah, yep, it was. I found myself listening to that or returning to that video, yeah, during the pandemic more than any of the others.
Yeah,
They sounded great that night. They were playing well, and it was a really unique sound, for them. That, certainly there's attendance bias from that era,
yeah,
but the shows that where they, they'll stand up. They stand up.
they do. And I've been wanting to get a hold of that Sting opener set too, because that was
Oh,
it was really good. And it was I
uh,
had I had part of it on the filler of my Buckeye cassette back in the day, but that's long gone, and I've never been able to find it again.
uh, uh,
But yeah, he had a
yeah, I
great
remember.
band at
Yeah,
the
I
time.
remember.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember Jerry coming out during Sting's set and sitting in for a couple songs too. I can't remember what the
yeah.
songs were though.
Tea in the Sahara, I think was the one.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that was pretty good. The,
Uh,
it was pretty good to see those two together.
yeah, I remember when they announced Sting as the opener for that tour, and I was somewhat surprised. But then
Mhm.
I went. Then when it was at the Soldier Field show. I saw Sting open for him, and I was impressed. I didn't, at that time I had not realized how jazzy Sting had gotten with his music, and
Yeah,
now I listen to Sting still regularly. So.
yeah, it was definitely a lot different than the Police, but
Uh,
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 but it was enjoyable. Yeah, you had to sit through
uh,
"If I Ever Lose My Faith," but there was some good stuff mixed in there too.
yeah.
They had some unique openers. They had Violent Femmes one year in that era, and I think Steve Miller opened for him in '92.
Uh, uh,
That was a pretty good set. At Buckeye,
uh,
I don't know where else he went, but
Huey Lewis, he opened, I think, at some of their shows. Maybe it might have been the Awesome shows, I think.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's and Los Lobos. Yeah, I think opened a few at some point. Yeah, they had some good openers.
Now I don't know if they opened or they came out and staged with them or something, but I think it was one of the Mardi Gras shows. Didn't the Bengals, out of all people?
Maybe I'm foggy on that one, but that does not mean it didn't happen. Anyway, awesome. So cool. Well, thank you for being on and telling your road stories, and it was great hearing them. It's good stuff, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate your, contacting me, reaching out to put this together, and yeah, it's been fun.
Awesome. All right, man. Have a good one.
All right, thank you, Will. You too.
Hey now, do you have a great story about a Grateful Dead show you were at? I'd love to hear it and maybe have you on the podcast. Send me an email at will@talesfromthelot.org and let me know what show you would like to talk about and what made it so special to you.